Did I get left at the altar? Yes. But what's worse than being abandoned in front of 200 guests is realizing that the man who left you never planned to love you, only to use you. My name is Sophie Daniels. I'm 30 years old, and 3 weeks ago, I stood in a $5,000 wedding gown under the vaulted ceiling of a private cathedral, waiting to marry Ethan Warren, the golden boy of one of California's most powerful tech dynasties. We had it all: a designer dress, imported flowers, a media crew on standby, 200 guests, and no groom. No message, no accident, just silence. At first, I thought it was cold feet, maybe panic, maybe betrayal, but the truth was so much worse. I found out later that Ethan never really loved me, but he did plan to marry me, because to his family, I was perfect, clean background, no scandals, no powerful ties. The kind of woman who made their dynasty look safe, domestic, stable, exactly what they needed to secure a billion-dollar merger. But a few days before the wedding, I found something I wasn't supposed to see. A name, a document, a signature that didn't match. And suddenly, Ethan disappeared. He'd rather abandon the altar and face public shame than risk what I might uncover if I stayed close. Because behind all of the silk and champagne, the Warren family was hiding something. An illegal transfer of power, forged contracts, and a cover-up that stripped a paralyzed man, Ethan's own brother, of everything he owned. And I was just the bait. They chose me because they thought I was harmless. But they were wrong. Because the woman Ethan left at the altar is the same woman who helped his brother walk again, who exposed every lie they buried, and who brought down the very empire they built on betrayal. This isn't the story of a wedding that never happened. This is the story of how I became the last person they ever expected to lose to. I used to believe that heartbreak made a sound, a scream, a sob, a shattering of glass. But on my wedding day, I learned something else. Heartbreak doesn't sound like anything. It's just silence. Heavy, crushing, endless. I stood there in front of 200 guests, my hands wrapped around a bouquet that was starting to wilt. The cathedral was beautiful, high-arched ceilings, soft golden light pouring through stained glass, a violin quartet playing Vivaldi in the background. It should have been the most magical moment of my life. Instead, it was the longest hour I've ever lived. My dress, a custom-made A-line from Paris, felt too tight around my ribs. I couldn't breathe, not because of the corset, but because something inside me was collapsing, slowly, silently. The first 5 minutes, people whispered that he was running late. The next 10, my maid of honor tried to make me laugh. By the 30-minute mark, my mother had stopped looking me in the eye. And at 55 minutes, the priest took a deep breath, stepped aside, and quietly signaled the musicians to stop playing. I heard the last violin note echo and die, and then nothing. No footsteps, no doors creaking open, no one coming down the aisle. Just the rustle of expensive fabric and the shallow breathing of 200 people pretending not to stare at me. Then a woman in a black earpiece, the wedding coordinator, approached. She leaned in and whispered behind her clipboard, her voice shaking. Miss Daniels, Mr. Warren won't be coming. I'm so sorry. That was it. Not he's on his way. Not there was an emergency. Just he's not coming. I felt my knees weaken, but I didn't fall. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, frozen, humiliated, abandoned. I don't even remember walking out of that cathedral. My feet moved on autopilot. My father had one arm around me. My best friend was holding the train of my dress. People parted like a tide. Some looked away. Others stared. Phones half raised, unsure whether to take a photo or just pretend. They didn't witness a woman being emotionally executed in public. Outside, the sky was too blue, the birds too cheerful. Everything looked offensively normal. I got into the black car meant to take me and Ethan to the reception, except now it was just me, alone, sitting next to a bouquet that still smelled like roses and betrayal. Ethan Warren had vanished. His phone was off. His groomsmen claimed they hadn't heard from him since the night before. His mother, Eleanor Warren, refused to answer any calls. It was as if the entire Warren family had dropped off the face of the earth the moment the cameras stopped rolling. And me, I became a headline. Runaway groom leaves. Dr. Bride at the altar. Warren dynasty wedding collapses in front of 200 guests. Sophie Daniels. The face of a wedding gone wrong. Everyone wanted to know what I'd do next. Would I sue him? Would I tell all on a talk show? Would I vanish? Like him? The answer was I didn't know, because the truth is, I couldn't think. I stayed in my apartment for 3 days, still in shock, still replaying the moment he didn't come, still waiting for a message that never arrived. Then, on the 4th day, a black car pulled up in front of my building. A driver stepped out and handed me an envelope. No return address, no explanation. Inside was a handwritten note. Miss Daniels, Mrs. Eleanor Warren would like to speak with you. You are invited to the Warren estate tomorrow at 9 a.m. Transportation will be provided. Please bring nothing. MT, Margaret Temple, the Warren family's estate manager. I stared at that letter for a long time. Why would Eleanor Warren want to see me now, to apologize, to offer hush money or something else? I didn't know, but at that point, I had nothing left to lose. The next morning, I got into the car. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't wear makeup. I didn't even change out of the oversized sweater I'd slept in. The ride took over an hour, through the hills, up winding private roads, past tall iron gates that opened without a sound. The Warren estate was even more impressive than I remembered. A modern fortress built of glass and stone, perched at the edge of a cliff with a view of the Pacific Ocean so wide it made you dizzy. Margaret Temple met me at the door. She was a tall, silver-haired woman in a navy suit so sharp it looked like it could cut glass. Her face was unreadable. Miss Daniels, she said, come with me. We walked in silence through long marble hallways. I didn't ask where we were going. I was too tired to care. Finally, we stopped in front of a set of double doors. Margaret turned to me and said, without emotion, Mrs. Warren would like to make you an offer. I blinked. An offer? She believes you may be uniquely qualified for a position we are urgently trying to fill. I stared at her. You want to hire me? Not me, she replied. Caleb? The name hit me like cold water. Caleb Warren. I whispered, Ethan's brother. Margaret nodded once. He requires round-the-clock care after your change in plans. It was suggested that perhaps you might be available. Unbelievable. I'd just been publicly humiliated by one Warren brother, and now they wanted me to work for the other. What does Caleb think of this? I asked. He's not aware yet, Margaret replied flatly. But he will be. And with that, the doors opened. The room was nothing like I expected. Vaulted ceilings, glass walls stretching floor to ceiling, a fireplace that looked like it belonged in a designer magazine, and an entire wall facing the ocean. But despite all the beauty, there was something sterile about it. Cold, too clean, like a space that had forgotten how to feel lived in. And there by the far window sat Caleb Warren. I don't know what I thought I'd see. A fragile man in pajamas, someone thin and hollow, with a soft voice and haunted eyes. No, that's not what I saw. Caleb Warren sat upright in a sleek black wheelchair, wearing a crisp charcoal shirt and dark pants. His frame was lean but strong, his shoulders broad. His dark hair was slightly tousled but deliberate, and his jawline sharp as stone. But it wasn't his looks that stunned me. It was his eyes. Cold, calculating, icy gray, and cutting. He didn't turn when we entered, just sat there, staring at the ocean like it owed him something. Then, after a long pause, he spoke low, clipped, and without looking. They sent me another one. I glanced at Margaret, who didn't react. Caleb, she said evenly, this is Miss Daniels. She's here to interview for the position. Let me guess, he continued, finally turning to face us. They said I was difficult, moody, uncooperative, and you think she'll last? What, a week? Maybe 10 days. His eyes landed on me then, unblinking, measuring. Something inside me braced. I'm not here to place bets, I said quietly. I'm here to do my job. He gave a dry laugh, one without amusement. And what job do you think that is? Medication, vitals, physical therapy, support. He smirked. You forgot the part where you nod sympathetically while I fail to walk again. That's usually everyone's favorite. I didn't blink. I'm not here to pity you. For a moment, the room went still. Then, to my surprise, a flicker of something passed through his eyes. Not warmth, but curiosity, or maybe disbelief. Well, he said finally, that's new. Margaret cleared her throat and handed me a folder. If Mr. Warren agrees, you'll begin tomorrow. We offer on-site lodging, all meals included. Your suite is on the second floor, adjacent to his. Caleb waved a hand. Sure, why not? Let's see how long this one lasts. I nodded once, took the folder, and followed Margaret out without another word. My heart was pounding, not because I was afraid of him, but because I couldn't stop thinking about what wasn't being said. That night, I lay awake in my guest suite. If you could call a 700 square foot private apartment with ocean views a guest suite, the bed was too soft, the silence too heavy. I kept replaying the encounter in my head. Who was Caleb Warren? How had a man like that, brilliant, powerful, commanding, ended up hidden away in a room like a forgotten heir? The official story was vague: a ski accident, a solo trip, loss of motor function from the waist down. But no one ever talked about him, not in interviews, not in the press, not even Ethan, especially not Ethan. And now, here I was, sleeping under the same roof, working for him. It didn't feel like a coincidence. It felt like a setup. But I didn't know yet setup for what. The next morning, I reported to his room at 7 a.m. sharp. He was already awake, seated by the window, sipping black coffee. "You're early," he said, without looking. "You're dressed," I replied. "That makes two of us exceeding expectations." He gave a grunt that might have been a laugh. The day was routine on the surface. I reviewed his meds, checked his vitals, ran through stretches and resistance exercises. Caleb didn't complain, but he didn't cooperate either. He challenged me with every move, questioned every instruction, made sarcastic remarks under his breath. But I'd worked in trauma wards, with soldiers, with overdose survivors, with mothers who screamed through pain and sons who cursed every breath. Caleb Warren wasn't going to scare me. By mid-afternoon, something shifted. He stopped mocking me, stopped resisting, and when I handed him a glass of water, he took it without a word. Progress. That night, as I helped him transfer from his chair to the edge of his bed, he said something unexpected. "You haven't asked about the accident." I looked at him, surprised. "I figured you'd tell me if you wanted to." Another pause. Then, quietly, "It was a ski trip, solo. I lost control on a ridge, woke up in a helicopter. Haven't stood unaided since." I nodded. "Thank you for telling me." He stared at me for a long second, then asked, "Why'd you take this job?" I hesitated, but only for a moment. "Because I needed it." "No," he said, "not the money. Why this job?" I looked him in the eye, and for the first time, I told the truth. Because I know what it feels like to be discarded, to be used, to be left behind like your value expired overnight. He didn't move, didn't speak, but something in his face cracked, just a hairline fracture, like a wall he didn't know that had been built, had just been touched. Then he said, barely above a whisper, "Don't get attached. I don't do gratitude, and I don't do friendship." "Good," I said. "I don't do illusions." And that was the first time he didn't ask me to leave. It was the wind that woke me. Not a dream, not a noise, just the wind. It had been howling since midnight, slamming into the ocean-facing windows like some restless ghost was pacing outside. I got up, threw on my sweater, and crossed the room barefoot, intending only to draw the curtains. But then I noticed a faint glow spilling into the hallway. A light was on in the West Wing. That didn't make sense. Everyone was asleep. Caleb never left his suite at night. He'd made that clear. And yet, the door to the private gym, the one I'd been explicitly told not to enter unless summoned, was cracked open. And there was light inside. I should have ignored it. I told myself that it wasn't my business. That if Caleb had some nightly ritual, it wasn't my place to interfere. But something tugged at me. Instinct, maybe, or just the lingering unease that had been building since I arrived. So I moved closer, quietly, slowly. I pushed the door open, just enough to see. And what I saw made my breath stop cold. Caleb Warren was standing. Not fully, not without assistance, but standing, arms gripped tight around a set of parallel bars, sweat soaking through his shirt, muscles in his arms and neck straining with effort. His legs, the ones everyone said were useless, were trembling beneath him. He was walking. One step, then another, shaky, slow, painful, but undeniable. He hadn't seen me yet. His focus was razor sharp, each movement deliberate, controlled. He looked like a man fighting gravity itself and somehow winning. But then the floor creaked. His head snapped toward me. Our eyes locked. And just like that, the cold fury returned. "What the hell are you doing?" he snapped. "I saw the light," I said, stepping forward carefully. I thought, "I don't need an audience. Get out." He was panting, furious, body trembling not just from exertion now, but from being seen, exposed. But I didn't leave. I stood my ground. "Why are you hiding this?" I asked softly. "Why are you pretending you've given up when you haven't?" His grip tightened on the bars, knuckles white. "Because the minute people see progress, they expect miracles," he said bitterly. "And the minute the miracles don't come, they walk away. I've seen it, again and again." I took another step closer, slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. "So instead, you fake helplessness. You pretend there's no hope, that's easier." "No," he growled, "but it hurts less." His eyes burned, but underneath the anger, I saw something else: fear. Real, raw fear. "You don't get it," he whispered. "The moment I show I'm improving, they'll expect me to be who I was. But I'm not that man anymore. I can't be." "I'm not asking you to be," I said. "I'm asking you to let someone stand beside you while you figure out who you are now." He stared at me, breathing hard, chest rising and falling. And then he sat back down, silent, exhausted. "Fine," he muttered, "but no one knows. No one, not even Margaret." "I understand," I said. "And you follow my lead. I say stop, we stop. I say go, you help. Nothing more." I nodded, agreed. He studied me for a long time, eyes sharp, jaw tight. "You're not like the others." "I'm not trying to be." From that night forward, everything changed. We trained early, before the staff was awake. Before the sunlight warmed the marble floors of the east hallway, just the two of us, moving in silence, breath and effort echoing off the stone walls. Each step was a war. He sweated, cursed, collapsed more than once. But he kept going, and I kept showing up. No praise, no cheers, no empty promises, just effort and progress and presence. It was about a week later when the next thread unraveled. I was organizing medication refills in the storage cabinet just off my suite when I heard a voice deep, confident, a little too smooth. Definitely male, and definitely not Caleb. Curious, I followed the sound down the hall to the west sitting room, the one rarely used. There, lounging casually on the leather couch like he owned the place, was a man I'd never seen before. Early 40s, expensive shoes, wristwatch that probably cost more than my car. He held a crystal glass of something amber, definitely not juice, and was laughing. "Ryan," he said, raising his glass. "You look like hell." I paused in the hallway. Ryan. He meant Caleb. That was his full name, Caleb Ryan Warren. Across from him, Caleb gave a tight, guarded smile. "Good to see you too, Eric." The man Eric leaned back, one arm slung over the couch. I stepped into the room quietly, tea tray in hand, playing the role of invisible help. Eric's eyes immediately flicked to me, slow, assessing, intrusive. "This the new one?" he asked, nodding toward me. I didn't answer, just set the tray down. "Emily Carter," Caleb said evenly. "She's my nurse." "She any better than the last three?" Eric chuckled. "She's not here to entertain you," Caleb replied sharply. Their conversation shifted to business, mergers, shareholder tension, government contracts. I tried to tune it out until one name stopped me cold. "Langley." Eric lowered his voice. "Laura says her father's ready to greenlight the funds. All we need now is your signature on the control transfer. Langley Capital takes over, the board's satisfied, and we move forward. Easy." Caleb didn't reply, just stared at the window, fingers tapping the armrest. "I've prepped the paperwork," Eric added. "All you have to do is sign." I backed out of the room before they noticed I was still there. My hands were shaking. Langley, Laura Langley, daughter of Gregory Langley. A name I knew all too well. Because her sister Megan Langley was the woman Ethan left me for. I didn't sleep that night. Not a second. I paced my suite like a caged animal, back and forth across the soft carpet, over and over. My mind kept circling the same name, Langley, Langley, Langley. There was no way it was a coincidence. Eric Caleb's so-called business partner was talking about handing control of the company to Langley Capital, with Laura Langley acting as the middlewoman, and Megan Langley. Laura's sister just so happened to be the woman my ex-fiancé left me for. No, this wasn't random. This wasn't fate. This was personal. And suddenly, I wasn't just a jilted bride anymore. I was part of something much, much bigger. By mid-morning, I still hadn't decided what to do. Part of me screamed to stay quiet, play the role, be the invisible nurse. But another part, the part that had stood in that cathedral and refused to fall apart, was louder. So when I found Caleb alone in the study, reviewing documents with a scowl deep enough to cut glass, I closed the door behind me and said, "I need to tell you something." He didn't look up. If this is about the staff fridge again, I swear, it's about Langley Capital. That got his attention. His head turned, slow and deliberate. "Go on." I stepped closer. My hands were shaking, but my voice held steady. "I overheard Eric talking yesterday. He said Laura Langley's father is ready to approve the funds, but only after you sign over the control transfer. It goes through a shell company. Langley Capital swallows it whole. You lose everything." Caleb's expression didn't change, but I saw the tension ripple through his shoulders. "There's more," I continued. "Laura Langley is Megan Langley's sister." His eyes narrowed. "And Megan Langley is the woman Ethan left me for." Now there was silence. A thick, hanging silence that felt like the air was folding in on itself. "You think Ethan and Eric are working together," he said slowly. "I think it's too convenient to ignore." He pushed himself away from the desk, wheeled toward the window, stared at the ocean. "I've known Eric since college," he murmured. "He was with me when I pitched my first startup. He was the best man at my—" He stopped himself. I didn't press. "I trusted him," he said, voice lower. "He started managing things when I got injured. Said he'd hold things together while I recovered." I waited. When he finally turned back to me, his eyes were harder. "I'll review the documents." That was it. No anger, no disbelief, no gratitude. Just distance. I wanted more, some kind of reaction, some sign that what I'd done mattered. But instead, he rolled back to his desk like I hadn't spoken at all. That night, I couldn't eat. Couldn't think. I kept asking myself, did I do the right thing? Did I go too far? Did I just jeopardize everything for a hunch? I told myself I wasn't crazy. I'd seen the patterns, the players, the timing, it all fit. But still, doubt lingered. Until the knock came. It was almost midnight. I opened my door, and there he was, Caleb, in his chair, a folder in his lap. "You were right," he said. I blinked. What? He held up the folder. "Langley Capital isn't just investing. The contract Eric prepped gives them decision-making rights over product development, staffing, finances, everything. And the shell company they're using was registered 2 months ago under a different name. I traced it. It all links back to Langley." My breath caught. "They were trying to take it," I whispered. He nodded. "They were, until now." That was the moment everything changed. We stopped pretending. No more small talk, no more dance of patient and nurse. We became something else, something harder, sharper, focused. We started meeting every night in the study, long after the staff had gone to sleep. Caleb brought out old files, backup emails, account records he'd quietly kept from before the accident. I reviewed legal terms, flagged red clauses, made notes. We worked for hours. sometimes until the sun began to rise. He was building a case. I was helping build the trap. One night, as we were sorting through a set of unsigned transfer documents, Caleb leaned back and said, "I let this happen." "You were recovering," I replied. "I was hiding," he said flatly. Eric handled the meetings. Ethan played the golden boy. I thought they'd keep things steady until I could take over again. But they didn't. No, he looked at me, and I didn't stop them. I reached across the table and placed my hand on top of his. "You are now..." A week later, a special board meeting was called. On the surface, it was about finalizing the merger agreement with Langley Capital, but Caleb had other plans. He'd already contacted legal counsel. The contracts were pulled. His lawyers were prepared. All he needed was a moment and one final impossible step. He wanted to walk. "I need them to see it," he said the night before, "with their own eyes. Not just that I'm alive, but that I'm not broken." "You don't have to prove anything to them," I said. "I do," he replied, "because if they believe I'm still weak, they'll sign those papers before I even enter the room." So we practiced. God, did we practice? 10 steps, then 15, then 20. He collapsed twice, swore a dozen times. But he kept going, and I kept catching him. And that night, just before dawn, he made it the full length of the hallway. Alone. The morning of the board meeting felt like the calm before a storm. Everything in the Warren estate was pristine, almost too pristine. The hallway lights were dimmed. The marble floors had been freshly polished. Even the garden, which Caleb had once called a cemetery with hedges, had been trimmed overnight. But inside the study, attention crackled like electricity. Caleb sat in his wheelchair, wearing a tailored midnight blue suit that fit him like armor. His hair was combed back, sharp and intentional, his jaw clenched, his eyes focused. This wasn't the recluse I met 2 weeks ago. This was the man they tried to erase. "How's the pain?" I asked, crouching beside him to help adjust the hidden knee brace. "Manageable." "You don't have to prove anything," I whispered. He looked at me, steady. "Yes, I do." I handed him the cane. He gripped it, took a breath, and slowly stood. His legs trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from strain. "Ready?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just walked. One step, then another, deliberate, slow, powerful. And I followed close behind, in case he faltered, but he didn't. The boardroom was a glass and chrome cathedral. 12 men and women in designer suits sat around a gleaming table, sipping overpriced coffee, flipping through briefing packets they'd already been coached on how to vote. At the head of the table sat Eric Thorne, and beside him, legs crossed, posture perfect, sat Laura Langley, in a dove-gray suit and lipstick that could cut glass. And next to her, Ethan. Oh my God. I hadn't seen him since the wedding. He looked smaller, still handsome, still polished, but thinner, paler, like someone had drained a little bit of the charm out of him. Our eyes met, and for a split second, he flinched, Then Caleb entered, and the room fell silent, like dead silent. He walked beside me, cane in one hand, folder in the other. Shock rippled through the table like a tremor. Eric stood halfway. Caleb. "I'll take it from here," Caleb said, voice calm but cutting. "This meeting is now under my authority." He walked to the head of the table, the seat that had once been his, and he took it. Laura narrowed her eyes. Ethan stared at the table. Eric tried to recover. "I'm glad to see you up," Eric said, fake smile tight. "You should have told me. We could have discussed things privately." "We will," Caleb said, "right now, in front of everyone." He opened the folder. "Let's begin." For the next 15 minutes, Caleb laid out every detail, every forged signature, every suspicious transaction, every shell company connected to Langley Capital. He exposed the plan, Eric's plan to hand over controlling interest of Hale Nexus Technologies to a holding firm owned by Gregory Langley, using Caleb's compromised legal authority during his recovery. He showed emails, timestamps, hidden wire transfers. When he was done, the only sound in the room was Laura Langley shifting in her seat. "You can't prove intent," Eric muttered. "I don't have to," Caleb replied. "I only have to prove breach of fiduciary duty, which I just did." The company's general counsel stood up. "Mr. Warren, would you like to call a vote of no confidence?" "I would," Caleb said, "effective immediately." The board voted unanimous. Eric was out. The contract's nullified. And just like that, the empire they built on backroom deals and stolen power began to crumble. Laura stood abruptly, her heels clicking like gunshots. "You don't know who you're messing with," she snapped. Caleb didn't flinch. "Oh, I do. A woman hiding behind her father's name, and a man who sold out everything for a shortcut." She glared at me. "And your nurse? What is she, your co-founder now?" Caleb looked at me, then back at her. "She's the reason I'm standing here at all." Ethan looked away. He hadn't said a single word the entire meeting. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. When the room finally cleared, only Caleb and I remained. He exhaled, long and slow. "You did it," I whispered. He looked at me, eyes clear, shoulders straight. "No," he said, "we did." And then, just for a moment, he smiled. Not the polite kind, not the guarded one I'd seen before. A full, real, wide smile. And I realized in that exact second that he hadn't just taken his first steps that day. So had I. Weeks passed. And for the first time since I set foot in the Warren estate, the silence no longer felt oppressive. The halls weren't as cold, the rooms didn't echo as much, the windows were open more often, letting the breeze in, letting light flood the marble floors. Even the garden, once dry and stiff and overgrown, started to breathe again. Caleb walked every morning now, sometimes with the cane, sometimes without. He still limped, still braced himself on doorways when the pain got bad, but there was a quiet fire in him, not just determination, but peace. He didn't need to prove anything anymore, and neither did I. The wedding I never had, I stopped mourning it. The name I almost took, I let it go. I stopped asking why Ethan left, or what I lacked, or how everything unraveled, because the truth was, I'd gotten everything I needed from that heartbreak. A lesson, a doorway, a detour into something better. We never talked much about what we were. Caleb wasn't the romantic type. He didn't do grand declarations or flowery words. But one night, about a month after the board meeting, he cooked dinner for me. Well, tried to. He burned the rice, cursed at the stove, threw a dish towel at the wall. I sat at the kitchen island, watching him mutter under his breath, smiling harder than I had in weeks. When he finally handed me a plate of something unrecognizable, he said, "If this kills you, I want it on record that I tried." "If it does," I deadpanned, "you get the company in the will." He paused. "Actually, no." I looked up. "No." He leaned against the counter, eyes on mine. "I transferred it to a trust," he said quietly. "One that includes you." I blinked. "What?" "I'm not giving you the company," he added quickly. "But I want you to know that I built something better with you than I ever did with anyone else. And I want you to be part of whatever comes next." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small black box. My heart skipped. He opened it. Inside was a simple gold ring with a single sapphire. Small, unassuming, nothing like the one Ethan gave me. "Before you say anything," he said, voice low, "you don't have to answer. Not today, not this year. I know I'm still learning how to be this version of me, and I know you didn't sign up for any of this." He paused, took a breath. "But I'd like to ask anyway, will you consider walking this road with me? Not because I need saving, but because with you, I remember who I am." I didn't cry. I thought I might, but instead, I felt something else. Something steady, a sense of arrival, like I'd walked through the darkest part of the forest and found not a castle, but a clearing, a place to breathe again. I slid the ring onto my finger. "I'm not saying yes," I whispered, smiling, "but I'm not saying no." He laughed. "That sounds exactly like you." We didn't make a big announcement. There were no engagement posts, no articles, no headlines. Just more mornings, more walks, more work. He walked half a mile on his own by fall. I passed my certification to open my own private rehab practice. We hired staff, real staff, people who weren't just there for image or manipulation. I stayed in the estate, but it no longer felt like his. It felt like ours. As for Ethan, he texted me once. 2 lines. "Are you okay?" I never responded. Because the truth was, I was more than okay. On Caleb's birthday, we took a trip up the coast, just the two of us. No lawyers, no nurses, no corporate meetings. We walked down the beach at sunset, side by side, the sand cold under our feet, the sky painted in streaks of orange and violet. At one point, he stopped and looked out at the ocean. You think we'll ever go back to who we were before all this? I didn't hesitate. I hope not. He turned to me. Because who we became is better. He didn't say anything. He just reached for my hand. And this time, he didn't let go.